Welcome, everyone. Welcome to my talk. In my talk, I'm going to be talking about my personal journey with imposter syndrome. I'm Derek Campbell, also known as DevOps Derek on Twitter. I hope you're enjoying Data Scotland. But if you do have any questions about my talk, please do reach out to me on DevOps Derek on Twitter. So let's jump in. So, what are we going to talk about today? We're going to talk a little bit about what is imposter syndrome. And then what we're going to do is we're going to move on and then talk about how I've dealt with imposter syndrome. This is something I've been doing at the end of some of my talks. So one of the things is you may have saw some of these slides before. I'm a big fan of sharing my experience, and you'll understand why in one of the later slides. So let's start. What is imposter syndrome? Well, imposter syndrome refers to an internal experience when you feel that you're not competent as others perceive you to be, or when you compare yourself to others. It's a fairly narrow definition in that it has links to perfectionism and in that social context. To put it simply, imposter syndrome is the experience of feeling like a phony. You feel as though at any moment you're going to be found out as a fraud. Obviously, like for instance, like you don't belong where you are, and you only got there through luck. And it can affect lots of different people with social statuses, work backgrounds, skill level, expertise, etc. And the term was first used by psychologists Susanna Eames and Paula Rose Clance in the 1970s. When the concept of imposter syndrome was introduced, it was originally thought to apply mostly to high achieving women. But obviously, with everyone talking about it now, it does impact everyone at any point in their career. Like, for instance, I've mainly struggled with it over the last 3 years. Funnily enough, when I started at Octopus, I think one of the things that caused me is I loved Octopus Deploy. I was a long time user. I'd spoken briefly to Paul Stovall, who the founder and CEO of Octopus Deploy. I'd spoke to a few of the engineering leads, and for me that was quite scary. When I came on board, I felt like I felt like I had to contribute very, very quickly. Because one of the things, some of the characteristics that you experience with it is self doubt, an inability to realistically assess your competence and skills, attributing your success to external factors like luck, and then berating your performance. I know that for instance, I still struggle with that. Fear that you also don't live up to expectations, overachieving, and actual sabotaging your own success as well. But yeah, and one of the things that I know I've done is trying to set really challenging goals and then really cut myself up when I don't get there. So as you can see, there's lots of different characteristics to it. And some of these tips may work for you, some may not. Obviously, by all means, please share them with me, because it is something that I still struggle with, and it's the reason I actually speak about it, because one of the main benefits is by speaking about it, I'm making people aware that I suffer that, and then hopefully I'm sharing that with others, and that will help them. So, I think we've covered what is imposter syndrome. Let's talk about how I deal with it. So, how I deal with it is mostly by talking about it. One of the things that I do is I talk about it with colleagues and friends, family. I speak to my wife about it. She generally cures it pretty quickly, thankfully. But one of the things I would do is look for an ally. That could well be your colleague. That could well be a friend. You could be having a beer, obviously not in the COVID sense, but say you're out, you're even on Zoom talking to a friend, talk about it. That's the biggest thing that I did, was just making myself and other people aware of something I suffered. And I had a lot of feelings about, not being good enough, And in actual fact, without being, I'm pretty awesome. Um, and that's the thing with it. But yeah, definitely talk about it. Talk about it with colleagues and friends and family. If you feel that you can't talk to your colleagues about it, I'd probably consider your working situation. If you can't be honest and open with them, that may be a toxic work environment. You could always fix that, or potentially you may need to look at other teams, other companies, etc. Um, that's an unfortunate situation to be in. But yeah, certainly do talk about it, admit it to yourself. Speak. Like one of the things I did was speak to my boss about it. Um, One of the tips that I use is mentally reinforcing yourself. What does that mean? Um, Generally, it's having an internal dialogue and and validating that I feel that I'm good enough to give this talk. So I know that's probably a hard one. That's probably one of the ones that may not work for everyone. One of the big things that I also do is admitting to myself it's okay not to know something. I think one of the things that I see quite a lot is technology now. You can go from zero to hero with a particular say a particular tool or a programming language. I think ultimately just admitting to yourself and others that it's okay not to know something is a really big thing. For instance, I know ARM. Do I know everything about ARM templates? No. Terraform. Do I know bits there? Yeah. But do I know everything? No. I'm a certified Azure solution architect. Do I know everything about everything on Azure? No. I know enough to get me started, and the rest I just use my Google or having a little play. But I think like that, just being able to admit to yourself and to others that it's okay not to know something is a massive step forward. You can actually pair up. One of the things is say for instance you have Rebecca on your team who is an Azure architect and you want to know about that. Pair up with Rebecca. That's great. Another one is don't obsess about perfection. That one is one of the big one. What I mean with don't obsess about perfection is it's okay not to for it not to be perfect. I'm a big fan of that 80-20 rule where you can get to 80% of something with 20% of the effort. I'm a big fan of that. I may not, obviously if you consider T-shaped learning, T-shaped learning is when you know lots about, a little about a lot of things, but a lot about a few things. And I think that is applicable here. When it's kind of a little bit of a combination of okay not to know something and also just obviously obsession about perfection. So yeah, obviously faking it until you make it. I've got a story that I shared here. About 8 years ago, I was working in London, and I remember I was a site core consultant, but from an infrastructure perspective, I was going. We won this project. As part of that, we had to go and do a bunch of meetings on site. One of the things that we had been requested was to come and talk about MS SQL to some Oracle DBAs. So obviously it was a change. Oracle was a different database technology, and I remember, what I did was obviously I had the project lead, I had the delivery director. They were supposed to be coming with me. I had a presentation and then bits for questions, and all I had was an iPad. And I remember being nervous on the morning of that meeting. I went into work and the delivery director wasn't well, didn't make it into the office. And then the project manager unfortunately got tied up on something that was high priority and couldn't come along. So there I was, off into central London, armed with an iPad to talk to Oracle DBAs about MS SQL, and I was terrified. And what happened is I went on premise and I found out that their IT department was actually about twice the size of the organisation I was working for at the time. They had roughly 190 people in their IT team, and that terrified me. Turns out 13 of them were database administrators. They were all Oracle. What landed up happening was we landed up a really great session. We were talking about, compatibility modes, collations, etc. SQL clustering, always on availability groups, all that sort of good stuff. And by the end of the meeting, I'd lost all fear. I felt fantastic because I'd managed to hold my own in a room of DBAs. And DBAs, obviously, as I said, Data Scotland Talk, most of you will likely be database administrators. You certainly have a particular approach to certain things. But by the end, I felt fantastic because I had relayed all the information that was in my head and in my presentation to DBAs who were looking at new technology. And honestly, what landed up happening was I was then the subject matter expert on databases for that organisation. We landed up having a really great relationship, and I worked with them for about 5 years in the end. And that really helped. What I would say is my imposter syndrome has probably got worse over the last few years. It's definitely getting better. The main reason is I speak about it, and that's one of the things that I recommend is speak about it to everyone that you can. And if you can, give speaking a chance. Being at this side of things initially is terrifying, but what you can do is you can really help people. And I think, see, I do this at the end of some of my talks, and the main reason is to encourage others to get up and talk about their experience, what technologies they're passionate about, and so forth. And speaking really does help because what happens is it validates how much knowledge you have, and one of the things that I was surprised when I started speaking was how much knowledge I actually had. Certainly there was gaps there, like I was saying earlier on about ARM. Am I an ARM expert? No, I can generally get there though, and that's the thing. It's really being able to speak about it really helps. Or if you can, encourage others to speak. You may not, you may be crippled by fear. What I would say is it's really not that difficult, but it could be for you. But if you don't want to speak, that's fine. You may find that maybe doing a presentation or some documentation can also help you. And one little tip I give to everyone is compare yourself to your yesterday, not someone else's today. This is something I found. I think it was on a podcast or some website. I can't remember where it came from, if I'm being honest, but it's something that I love to tell people. The main reason is, as long as you're looking to always learn and you're open to the idea, compare yourself to your yesterday. That's not literal, but 6 months ago. Think about what I do sometimes is write down some of the new technologies that I've learned over the last few months, and that really helps build my confidence. And we're not all Scott Hanselman, we're not all Troy Hunt. You are who you are, and the main thing is trying not to compare yourself to others. That's just going to be land up in a bad situation. Compare yourself to you and where you were 3, 6, 9, 12 months ago, even further as well. Like for instance, I remember 10 years ago I was a sysadmin before just been looking at DevOps, and here I am now 10 years later working at a great company doing some really cool stuff and really enjoying it. But yeah, unfortunately that's all the time I have today. I hope you learned something. If you do have any questions, please do reach out to me on Twitter at DevOpsDerek. But thank you very much. I've been Derek Campbell. Enjoy the rest of your day.